Good morning to everybody. In my last week discussion, initial discussion, we looked at the definition of ethics and also I explained to you basic three categories of three aspects of ethics. Meta-ethics, normative ethics, and also applied ethics. Now, basically, applied ethics is the ethics concerning the more controversial contemporary problems, particularly that are discussed in what we call bioethics. Issues like abortion, euthanasia, and gene technology and things like that. Apart from this practical aspect, we have two important aspects of ethics, meta-ethics and also normative ethics. Meta-ethics is basically the discussion on ethics, I would say more philosophical discussion on ethics. And then we are discussing issues related to ethics. When it comes to normative ethics, of course we are talking about norms, basic principles of ethics, what is good and bad. So on the one hand, we have what we consider to be good and bad, right and wrong, and what we mean by sila usually. Different religions give different lists of what is good and bad, what should be done and what should not be done. So those things are basically normative ethics. But on the other hand, sometimes we discuss when we say something is good, what do we mean by that? If something is good, how can we determine that it is good? Or something, how can we determine that it is bad? Or what is the criterion of ethics? How do we decide? Now those questions belong to meta-ethics. So I hope you see the difference between the two. On the one hand, we are talking about the sila, or the virtues, or the 5 precepts, 10 precepts, samanera sila, upasampada sila, that sort of thing. So those are norms. So that is why they are called normative ethics. But meta-ethics is basically, we are discussing about ethics. Meta-ethics means about ethics. Now when we say about ethics, we are discussing matters related to ethics, criteria of ethics, criteria of good and bad, things like that. So basically, those are the three categories we discussed in our last discussion. And when we look at Buddhist ethics, we can see both these things. On the one hand, we have sila, and particularly if you take texts like Visuddhimagga. Visuddhimagga has so much, sila nirdesa. So there are various categories of sila. We will be looking at them later. All those accounts are included in what we call normative ethics. They are norms. They are to be observed, to be followed. So that's why they are called normative ethics. But at the same time, we have in Visuddhimagga beginning with King Sila. What is Sila? Now there you see a definition given to Sila. Now that belongs to a different category. Do you see the point? Sila, on the one hand, we have what we consider to be Sila to be observed. But at the same time, there are discussion on Even in the Buddha Kosha, even in the discourses, we have the question raised, what is Sila? Then you are going to define what Sila is. So that definition is included in a different type of, so it's a different category of discussion. So the meta-ethics means that in the today's name. But if you look at the Buddhist literature, we have both these aspects. Only thing is there are no two terms, because meta-ethics and normative ethics are two terms we borrow from modern Western philosophy. But if you look at Buddhist philosophy, we don't have two terms, both those things. But we do have these two categories. On the one hand, we have morality or sila to be observed. At the same time, we have discussions like, what is sila? Kenattena sila, king sila, what is sila? Kenattena sila, in which sense sila is sila? Now you see, those questions belong to different category. Do you see the difference between what I try to explain between meta-ethics and normative ethics? So on the one hand, simply saying we are talking about sila or morality to be observed. So when we talk about 5 precepts, 10 precepts, that is it. But at the same time, we also have discussions about it, about sila, about ethics. Theoretical aspects. Now that is called meta-ethics. Okay. So moving from there, now that account, that analysis I introduced you to for the basic understanding of this subject, because when we talk about ethics, now ethics is part of philosophy. Ethics is part of philosophy. So when we take ethics as an aspect of philosophy, in ethics we study what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. Okay. Now starting from there, then today we will move into what we call basically when we discuss Buddhist ethics. Now when we discuss Buddhist ethics, on the one hand we are discussing sila. In the Buddhist path, sila, samadhi, panya, we have sila. However, when we talk about what is good and what is bad, it is not confined to sila alone. When we say what is good is much larger thing. It goes more than sila. What is good according to Buddhism? There are many good things. Ultimately, the highest good. What is the highest good according to Buddhism? Nirvana. Right? Yes. Highest good is Nirvana. Now, you can see that starting from sila, samadhi to panya to nirvana. So, if you talk about, okay, ethics is a study of what is good and bad, then you can see that entire Buddhist path is included in ethics, including nirvana. Okay? So in that sense, we have a much broader concept of ethics when we talk about Buddhist ethics. Okay? So in other words, in Buddhist ethics, we start our discussion with sila. What is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong. Now sila in many different contexts. However, starting from sila, finally we end up in what we consider to be the highest good according to Buddhism, attaining nirvana. Now before attaining nirvana, there are other good things. Like sometimes we talk about Sagga and Mokkha. Sagga is the heaven, Mokkha is the release, nirvana. Now Sagga, heaven, although it is good, it is in the samsara. Right? Now samsara, ultimately we have to go beyond the samsara when we realize nirvana. So which means that when we talk about good, there are different levels of good. being born as a human being is a good thing, right? But of course, human beings expect to be born in heaven, Sagga. And human beings and all those who are in the Sagga, everybody ultimately wish to attain final goal, the highest good, Nirvana. So you can see different grades of good. Different grades of good. So all those things are also included in when you call Buddhist ethics, okay? Now please ask if you have any questions in understanding this. Now, okay, this is what we discussed in our last discussion. Today I would like to move into the background and basis of Buddhist ethics. Background and basis of Buddhist ethics. What is meant by this is, now in order to understand the Buddhist ethics, what the Buddha said about Sila and the behavior, we have to understand, we have to have some knowledge about the religious tradition that existed during the time of the Buddha. And usually ethical aspects, Sila, comes in a certain context. That context is basically the religious context. What we mean by religious context is, now when the Buddha taught the Dharma, Buddha was teaching Dhamma in a society. Not only the Buddha was there as a religious teacher, there were many other religious teachers. There were many other religious traditions. Now in all those religious traditions too, there was Sila. So how is the Buddhist Sila different from these other Silas? How is the Buddhist tradition different from other religious traditions? Now, in order to understand this aspect, we have to have some idea about the religious traditions, ethical traditions during the time of the Buddha, okay? So, only knowing the Buddhist tradition will not be complete, will not give a complete knowledge to you. So we will have to have some understanding about the basis and the background. So that is the background. And then what we mean by basis, basis is like if you take any building, a building is constructed on a foundation, right? What we see is the building. You don't usually see the foundation. But of course there is a foundation upon which the building is built. Now, what is the basis of? What is the foundation of Sila? What are the basic assumptions? What are the basic beliefs that lie behind Sila? So that is what is meant by basis. So in today's discussion, we will look at the basis of Buddhist Sila, and also we will look at the background, the society, the religious society within which Buddhism arose in general, and also within which Buddhist Sila comes. So this is what we are trying to do today. I have given it with some detail. Buddhist ethics has to be understood in the religious context of the ancient India during the time of the Buddha. The predominant religious tradition was Brahmanism, which had a system of ethics based on conventions such as Ishvara Nirmana, divine creation, Varna Dharma, caste system, Swadharma, duties of caste, and Ashrama Dharma, stages of life. In addition, the manner in which they treated women is an integral part of this ethics. The other religious tradition was that of Shramana, which was a collection of groups of religious people the common characteristic of whom was the rejection of Brahmanism. Now, what this tries to say is, when you look at the time of the Buddha, we see two main religious traditions, Brahmana religious tradition and also Shramana religious traditions. Now, Brahmana and Shramana. Brahmana was the main religious tradition. Okay. Now, Shramanas were different groups. Now, when we say Brahmana religious tradition, it was basically one religious tradition. However, when we say Shramana, there were so many Shramana groups during the time of the Buddha. Buddha himself was a Shramana. Okay. Now, in the discourses we find that Buddha is addressed as Samano Gautamo. So, Buddha is Samana. So, Buddhist monks are also Sramanas. So, Buddhism is a Sramana group. But along with Buddhism, there were Sramana traditions started even earlier. So, these are the two main religious traditions. Now, we can imagine that Buddha was born into a Brahmana religion, most possibly. However, when he went on in his renunciation, Abhinikkamana, Buddha joined the Sramanas. Because Brahmana religion was a traditional religion, it was like more like a priestly caste, priest. Now, priest is not really a Sramana. Even in English language, when we say priest and when we say monk, there is a difference. Now, monk is closer to Sramana, not priest. Priest means a person who is taking care of religion, religious duties, and go between the God and human being. So, usually priest is a profession, it is a job. In fact, it is a job. So, priest is supposed to be in between God and human beings. So, when people want to make some offering, it has to go through the priest. So, that was the function of the priest. So, Brahmanism was basically a function of the priest. Brahmins were priests. And then Brahmins were coming from their families, hereditary. Like you can't just become a Brahmin. You have to be a born Brahmin. You have to be born to that tradition. Okay? Anybody and everybody can't become a Brahmin. But anybody and everybody can become a Shramana. Okay? Because Shramana did not have this caste distinction. But Brahmins were Brahmin caste. Okay? So today, I mean, I put in within brackets Hinduism. What is meant by Brahmanism is Hinduism. However, this word Hinduism is a modern word. During the time of the Buddha or even after that, there was no something called Hinduism. Okay? Hinduism is a word and a concept that was created by basically very recently in the 19th century when the British came to India and they got India as a colony under them. So this is a kind of English concept. So historically we can't say that Buddha was a Hindu or Hinduism was there because Hinduism as one religion is something created recently. Brahmanism, the religion of the Brahmins, the religious system of the Brahmins was existed during the time of the Buddha. So we would, I think, historically more accurate to use term Brahmanism. And Brahmanism is a system of ethics. It is based on conventions such as Ishvara Nirvana. Ishvara Nirvana is divine creation. Okay, divine creation. Now, basically, the Brahmanic religion, the central view is the universe was created by God. Now, this belief is common to many other religions. In Indian context, it was called, in Pāli we say, Issara Nimmana Vada. Issara means Ishvara, or God. Nimmana means creation. In the Pāli discourses, you have the term Issara Nimmana Vada, or Nimmana Vada. Nimmana means Nirvana, the creation. So basically they believed that the universe was created by God. Now the important thing is not only the universe, everything within universe, including the human beings. Now when Ishvara created people, human beings, according to Brahmana belief, he created them into a Varna Dharma. Varna Dharma is basically caste system. So according to this religion, there were Brahmins, next Kshatriyas, Vessa, Vaishya, then the last is Shudras. So Brahmana, Khattiya or Kshatriya in Sanskrit, Vessa or Vaishya, Suddha or Shudra. Now this is called Varna Dharma. Varna Dharma means basically caste system. Now the meaning of Varna is color. So Varna Dharma means color phenomenon. In fact, historically, the caste system may have started from the physical color of the people, because the Brahminism belonged to Aryan civilization. Aryans were people who came to India from today, from areas like Iran, Afghanistan, that area. Usually people are fair, and then so when they came to India, maybe they must have seen people like me and more brown and darkish. So there was originally some kind of the color. So fair color is considered to be better, and the dark color is not very good. That sort of thing is something very old. So it may have started, we are not very sure, but it may have started from that belief. So it is called Varna Dharma. So Varna means basically what is meant by Varna is caste. So there were 4 different castes, and then these 4 castes were ordered in a hierarchical manner. So the Brahmins were created by Brahma's mouth, so they are the highest. And then Shastriyas were created by the hands, so they were second. And then the Vaishyas were created by the thighs, and then they were third. And the 4th Shudras were created by the feet, lowest. So you have this hierarchical order from top to bottom. And then also, now this is related to ethics. I mean, the good and bad, right and wrong were treated according to this hierarchy. In other words, certain things that are good or right for Brahmins were not good for, say, the lowest class. So good and bad, right and wrong were determined according to the caste system. For example, they had Varna Dharma and then Swadharma. Swadharma means the duties. So each caste had the Swadharma. Swadharma means its own duty. For example, learning the Veda and reciting the Veda was the Swadharma of the Brahmins. However, if the Shudras were to recite the Veda, they were very severely punished. So you see, good or right thing is one thing for the Brahmins, another thing for Shudras. So therefore, when we look at the Brahmanic ethical system, we can see that it was based on Varna Dharma, caste system, and also the Swadharma. Swadharma means each caste had its own duty, things they should do. So according to this, Swadharma for the Shudras was to serve others. They did not have any other religious duties or anything. Okay. So now you can see that the good and bad, right and wrong, the ethical system is formulated according to the caste system. And the caste system is made meaningful by Swadharma, one's own duties. And also we have what is called Ashrama Dharma. Ashrama means station or stage of life. Ashrama Dharma means in the Brahmanic life, they thought that as childhood, there are certain things to be. When you become young, there are certain things to be. When you become mature, certain things to be. When you become very old, there are certain other things. So the life was divided into 4 stages. Within these 4 stages, I mean, this aspect was basically confined to the higher caste, not to the lower people. Okay, but anyhow, so when we look at the Brahmanism, I am not going into detail with you. According to Brahmanism, the entire their ethical system, what they considered to be good and bad, right and wrong, was formulated according to these beliefs: divine creation, the caste system, duties of the caste, and also the stages of life. In addition, the manner in which they treated women is an integral part of ethics. Now again, even within, now you can see something very interesting. In the Brahmanic caste, the women were, of course, they were below the Brahmins. But then in all castes, women were lower. Now for example, a Brahmin woman can be higher than Shudra man or woman. But within the Brahmanic system, Brahmin woman was lower than the Brahmin. Within the Shastri woman was lower than the Shastriya male. So in that manner, the women were considered to be low. And not only that, when it comes to ethics, good and bad, right and wrong, for example, Brahmanism believed that woman does not need any other religious action than serving her husband. So by serving her husband, they said that woman can go to heaven. Now of course, ordinary people, in order to go to heaven, they have to perform meritorious deeds. But they said for the women, only meritorious deed they should perform is look after the husband. So if you look after your husband, then you go to heaven. Now what is this? Now there you can see that a woman is confined only to serve the man. So the woman is below the man, and even religion, I mean, she doesn't have that much of religious, the practices. They say that, just serve your man. Well, and then, you will be born in heaven. Of course, that doesn't mean that in Hindu tradition or the Brahman tradition, women are not observing religious, the rites and rituals. They do. In fact, their daily life, women observe more religious rites and rituals than men. That's a different thing. But basically, how they treated women is also a part of ethics. Because you can see that in the ancient Indian society, what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong was treated according to some kind of hierarchical system. Now, you can see, if you want to contrast this with Buddhism, there is no such thing, right? If you look at say for example, lay people are supposed to observe 5 precepts, right? But then whether this lay person is a king or president of a country or ordinary person, all of them have to observe the 5 precepts, right? No difference. Now if you take Buddhist monks, among the Buddhist monks, there are younger people, there are more educated people, there are great Sayadaws, and but do they have a different Vinaya systems? No. Everybody has one Vinaya, right? Now you see, this is the Buddhist situation. Now when you look at from this point of view, you can see that Brahmanic religious practice and the ethical system was different. Ethics was different according to different social groups. So even what is good is different according to different social groups. So in other words, it is like something like you have different goods, different good things for different people. But usually we tend to believe that good is good for everybody. Bad is bad for everybody, right? If you say that killing is bad for anybody and everybody. Whether you are a high person or low person, stealing is bad for anybody. Whether you are a high person or low person. But here you can see that what is good and what is bad and what is right and wrong differs according to the people, according to their social status, according to their caste. So this is the important thing when we think about this Brahman tradition. And the other religious tradition was that of Shramana, which was a collection of groups of religious people, the common characteristic of whom was the rejection of Brahmanism. Actually, all the Shramana groups were in common in rejecting Brahmanism. However, among themselves, they had many different religious views among the Sramanas. So, Shramana is not a one group. Sramanas were so many groups, but they were all in agreement in rejecting Brahmanism, right? So, when you say Shramana and Brahmana, Sramanas rejected Brahmanism. Now, when we say Sramanas rejected Brahmanism, one main thing is they rejected the caste system. They did not believe in caste system, right? Now, again, Buddhism is a good example. Buddha compared the sasana to the ocean, where to the ocean all types of rivers come and fall into the ocean and become the salty ocean water. And taking that example, Buddha said all different types of people come into this sasana and then they become Samana Sakya Puttiya and Sakyadhita. Samana Sakya Puttiya, the Buddha's sons and Buddha's daughters. Now when you say someone is Buddha's son, Buddha's daughter, that is the only name, that is only identification. Whether you belong to which caste is not an important thing in Buddhism. Now this was not only in Buddhism, all the other Shramana traditions, they did not consider Brahmanic caste system. So they rejected Brahmanism. They rejected Brahmanic caste system. Now in that sense, all the Shramana groups are one. However, although they were one in rejecting Brahmanism, they were very different in their religious beliefs. They are very different in their religious beliefs. Now, it is very important for us to have some understanding about these religious beliefs. It's very interesting. They had many types of very advanced religious beliefs. We will look at some of these things. The Samanas held different religious views. During the time of the Buddha, there were 6 Samana religious teachers, namely Purana Kassapa, Pakudha Kachana, Makkali Gosala, Sanjay Belatthiputta, Ajita Kesakambali, and Nigantha Nathaputta. Now, if you look at their views, Purana Kassapa, he rejected the action. Pakudha Kachana rejected causality. Makkali Gosala accepted a form of determinism. Sanjay Belatthiputta, skepticism. Ajita Kesakambali, materialism. Nigantha Nathaputta is Jainism. These views have a direct bearing on one's ethical standpoint. While Purana Kassapa rejected the efficacy of action and thereby one's free will to act, Makkali Gosala held a form of determinism and rejected one's free will to act. Pakudha Kachana's view rejecting causality also resulted in denying the efficacy of human action. Sanjay Belatthiputta was a skeptic and did not hold any definitive position on ethics. Ajitha Kesakambala, being a materialist, rejected all forms of ethical actions. Nikantanataputta believed in the existence of Atma and also held an extreme view of ethics. Now you see, these different religious beliefs have something very important to do with ethics. Now when you do good and bad, right and wrong, you are not simply doing those things. Those things are shaped by your philosophical ideas, right? What you believe about human nature, about the world, and about human action. Now it is very interesting if you look at some of these religious teachers. We have Purana Kassapa rejected efficacy of action, thereby one's free will to act. Now this concept of free will, whether we are free to do something. Now you can see some of these religious teachers rejecting the concept of free will. Now if we do not have freedom to do something, then of course we are not morally responsible for what we are doing. Now in order for us to be responsible for what we are doing, we need to have a freedom to do. Suppose I ask you to do something, pointing a gun to you. I will kill you if you don't do it. Then you do it. But are you responsible for it? No. Because you did it under threat. You did not do it with your free will. Now if the person did not threaten you, you will not do it. So that means you did not do it with free will, but because you simply wanted to save your life. Now with that type of situation, we say that we are not acting under free will. So this concept of free will and also the concept of determinism. So on the one hand we have the concept of free will, and then the determinism. Now this is something very interesting. There were several religious teachers during the time of the Buddha rejected free will, and also thereby they accepted some form of determinism. Now determinism means in religion and philosophy, determinism means the belief that our life has been determined, our life has been programmed by some person or some force. So in fact, although we think that we are free agents doing things, but we are not free. We mistakenly think that we are free. But according to this view, we are not free. For example, let me give you a very common example of determinism. A very popular example of determinism is called theistic determinism. Now theistic determinism means, theistic means God-centered. Now theistic determinism means, as in Brahmanism I mentioned earlier, you believe that you were created by Ishvara or by God. Now particularly we have theistic religions today, traditionally Judaism, Christianity and Islam. In our world religion discussion we come across these religions. Now in these religions, according to these religions, the universe was created by God. Now this God is considered to be omniscient. Omniscient means all-knowing. And omnipotent. Omnipotent means God has all the ability and powers to do anything. So omnipotent, omniscient, and also all-pervading. God is everywhere. So God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-pervading person. Now, they believe that when universe was created by God, in the universe, each and every human being was created by God. So, why God created human beings? God has a purpose according to this belief. So, each and every human being's life is seen by God before. Okay? Now, according to this theistic determinism, our lives have been determined by God. Now, which means that if your life has already been determined by somebody or some force, then the issue is how can you be responsible for what you are doing? Whether you do good or bad, you are doing because you have been programmed in such a way that you have to do that. That's all. So ultimately it is not your free will. You are doing something because you have been programmed to do it. It's like, the programmed thing. So we behave and we think we are free, but actually we are not free. So according to this belief, theistic determinism, our lives have been determined by an all-powerful divine creator. Now, if you believe in that type of determinism, then basically what happens is you cannot be held responsible for what you are doing. Now, we call this the moral responsibility. Moral responsibility means when a person does something, the ownership of that action has to be accepted by the doer. So, how can you attribute moral responsibility to a person if the person is not? So, moral responsibility. Now, moral responsibility and determinism are incompatible, cannot go together. If your life has been determined, you cannot do otherwise. You cannot do differently. Whatever you do, somebody knows that you are doing it. Somebody has determined it, namely God. So, God is responsible for that, not you. Then there is a very serious case. How can we say that people are responsible for their actions? Now, this responsibility of action is something very important. Even in the law, the responsibility of action is not attributed to a person if that person acted under constraint. As I said earlier, if I do something under someone's threat, I am not free. So, if I were to taken to court will not punish me because I have done it under constraint, under threat. I can't be held responsible for what I did because under ordinary circumstances, usual circumstances, I would not have done that. But I did it because somebody else was threatening me, holding a gun behind me. Now you are not responsible because moral responsibility cannot be attributed to that person because that person acted under duress. Okay? So, therefore, the concept of moral responsibility and determinism is hard to go together. Now, there are various forms of determinism. One thing is theistic determinism. Now, something similar has been held in the Indian tradition and it also found among the Buddhists, namely karma determinism. In the teaching of the Buddha, in the discourses, we get this idea, sabbam pubbe kata hetuvada. So, the theistic determinism, and in the same manner we have sabbam pubbe kata hetu vada. Vada means the view or the belief, acceptance. Sabbam pubbe kata hetu. Everything happens due to past karma. Now you can see that this also is a kind of determinism. Now if we believe that everything in our present life is due to past karma, then how can you be responsible? Everything happens to you, everything you do, everything you say, all these things is sabbang ubbe kata hetu. If it is everything is due to past karma, then you are coming with the bundle of past karma. You can't be behaving differently. Now Buddha says in some place, if you are a killer, taking life, panatipati, then it is because of your past karma. If you are stealing, it is because of your past karma. Everything else, if your health, your other things, everything is past karma. If you are not studying, if you are not educated, it's your past karma. Now, if it is past karma, then how can you be responsible? How can you change it? Now, that is that we can call karma determinism. Earlier one we call theistic determinism. This we can call karma determinism. Now, karma determinism is another thing. Karma determinism means if you believe in that manner about karma, then of course you are determined and you can't behave otherwise. Now, there can be many different types of determinism. Now, these religious people, Purana Kassapa and Makkali Gosala in particular, Pakuda Kachana, when they rejected the efficacy of human action. Efficacy of human action means that human action is capable of producing results, and human action, when somebody does it, that responsibility is borne by that person. So, when all these things are rejected, what happens is ultimately you are accepting some kind of determinism, some kind of chance rising of something, believing in some type of what is called adhicca samuppannavada. In the Pāli discourses we find it, view that things arise out of no causes. So now that type of situation is very ethically very serious. Now if you believe in something like that, determinism, if you don't believe in human action, if you don't believe that we have free will to do, then of course ethically it is very important that ethical actions are useless, meaningless. So it is important for us to believe, according to Buddhism, that human beings have free will. Free will means human beings have independence, liberty to do something. Now if you don't have that liberty, if you are not free to do, then of course you can't be responsible for your behavior. But we know that according to Buddhism, we are responsible for our behavior. If you do good things or if you do bad things, we are responsible for it. Buddha says that chetana ahang bhikkhave kammang vadami. Chetana, volition is the karma. Now your good chetana or bad chetana, you have to be responsible for that. In the Dhammapada you have mano pubbangama dhamma. All these things are mano pubbangama. Your mind is the forerunner. Now which means that according to Buddhism you have free will. But then you can see that the society during which the Buddha came, Buddha started talking about Buddhist ethics. They are in that society, we can see that there were religious teachers and then there are followers who did not believe in freedom, human agency, efficacy of human action. So these ideas are important. And then you have Sanjay Bellatiputta was a skeptic and did not hold any definitive position in ethics. Now Sanjay Bellatiputta is considered to be a Amaravikhepa. What it means is a skeptic. Skepticism means the belief that our knowledge is impossible. We cannot get definitive knowledge about anything. Now that's why Sanjay is supposed to have said no to any question. No, I don't think so. I don't accept so. Now there is a big difference between when you say I don't think so and it is not there. When I say I don't think so, it is my personal view. So Sanjay Belatiputta's position was he did not believe, he did not think that these things are possible, knowledge is possible. So how it influences your view in ethics, you will not be really committed to any type of ethical actions. Whether something is good, your answer would be, well, I am not sure, I don't know. Whether something is bad, again the answer would be, I am not sure, I don't know. Now, if you are not sure, if you don't know, how can you behave? To be responsible people, we must be able to defend what we are doing. If someone asks you why you are a monk or why you are a nun, you must be able to answer. Otherwise, if you say, I don't know, do you think that's a good answer? No. You must be able to say. Now, skepticism means basically to reject any kind of knowledge about anything. Now, so there were some people like that. Sanjay Bellatiputta. I'm just giving you a pretty basic idea, not in detail. And then look at Ajitha Kesakambala being a materialist, rejected the forms of ethical actions. Now, Ajitha Kesakambala's position, rejecting ethical action. Now, materialist, according to him, I mean, everything is matter. And they held that your life is over at the death. Life is over at the death. There is a famous statement attributed to Ajitha Kesakambala's type of philosophy. There was another very well-known philosophical name in Indian tradition, Charvaka. Now, for Charvaka, attributed philosophy is that it says that live as long as you live very happily. Enjoy yourself because your life is ended at the grave. Bhashmi bhutasya dehasya punaragamanam kutah. When your body is cremated, how can it come again? Now, if you believe that we are only bodies, of course, at the death, our body is burned, then what? Nothing. Everything is over. You are not born again. Now, you know, this belief is very important for ethics. Why do we do good things or not to do bad things if you are not being born again? If the life is over with this life? You know, there are people will not have a very good reason to be ethical if life does not continue. Now, according to the karma and punabhava, karma and punabhava, we know that good actions have good results, bad actions have bad results. Now, these things will take place over the sansaric journey, right? But if you think that, you know, nothing is after death, then why do you have to worry about all these things? It's a short life. Charvaka said it's true then. You just enjoy your life till you die. That's all you need to do. Don't worry about. Now you see the very basis of ethics is damaged there. Because if you don't believe in rebirth, if you think that everything is physical, then there can't be a continuation of your personality, right? Now, if you are only bodies, body is burnt, end of the story. But we at the same time, we believe that human beings are not only Rupa, but human beings are Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana. With this combination, we are born again. Although our body is destroyed, our personality in a dependently originated manner continues. Otherwise, no meaning, right? If I do something now, if I am not born again, who is going to get the result? If a totally different person is going to get the result, then it is the position described as Anyo karoti, anyo patisamvedeti. Doer is one, experiencer is another. Now that is not reasonable, that is not just. Because one person to do the karma and another person to get the result, now that is not good at all. So you know the karma theory, the ethical action has to have the concept of punabhava, what we call punarutpatti, Punabhava, rebirth as an important thing. If we don't have rebirth, then of course you can question, why do we have to be ethical? Why do we have to be doing all these difficult things? You all can become ordinary people and enjoy life and finish it. But simply because we believe that the life continues through samsara, ethical actions, good and bad actions we have a reason to do what is good and not to do what is bad. Okay, so therefore Ajitha Kambala's view is again very important. And the Nigantanatha Putta believed in the existence of Atma and held an extreme view of ethics. Now when I said that we are born again and again, but at the same time Buddhism makes a distinction between we do not have unchanging Atma. Now basically not only Jaina, Nigantanatha Putta, Brahmanism and many other beliefs held that we have an unchanging Atma. Now it is in a way interesting when you believe that you have an unchanging Atma, only thing that changes is your body. So in this birth we can say that your Atma is going through a human body, next birth Atma is going through a bird, after that Atma will be going through a reptile, but anyway Atma remains unchanged, that's the view. So therefore you are you. But the Buddhist position is difficult because Buddha says that we have Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankara Vijnana, but Vijnana is also arising, ceasing, some kind of process. During the time of the Buddha there was one monk called Sati who believed that Vijnanam Sandhavati Sansarati Ananya. He believed that Vijnana goes around without change. Buddha said nonsense. Buddha said, Paticca Samuppannam Vijnanam Buddhang Maya. I have taught you Vijnana is dependently arisen. So Vijnana is not like Atma. So on the one hand, Buddhism rejects the concept of Atma, but at the same time accept Vijnana, which goes as a process. So it is a Vijnana Sota, process of Vijnana that goes according to Buddhism. Now that is not very difficult to understand. Now today if you consider about yourself, we are at different ages here, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever. Now did we come to this world as we are today? No. We just came to this world as very small infants, right? But then if you identify that infant with you, you say that I was born 25 years ago. Now what has happened? Are you the same infant? No. But then what has happened is your Vijnana has continued through, but it's not the same Vijnana. It is the dependently arisen Vijnana. So one Vijnana cannot be separated from the other. So in that sense you have this unbroken process, but not a Atma. Now when you say Atma, Atma is unchanging phenomenon. In the Upanishads it is said, Na hanyate hanyamani sharire. When the sharira is destroyed, Atma is not destroyed. Now the difference in the Vijnana is a sota. Vijnana is a process. So this process, of course, it is connected. It is connected from our birth to present day. It is connected till we die. And after the death also it is connected with the next birth. So that is why sansaric process goes on, and we can talk about next life or life after. That is why in the Buddha's life we have all the Jataka stories where Buddha says that I was born in such and such a manner and like that. Okay. So you can see that Ajitha Kambala's view directly has a bearing on ethics. In other words, if you believe in Ajitha Kambala's type materialism, you don't need much of ethics. Okay. I mean, I am not saying that materialists do not have ethics. Of course, materialism can have ethical system. But if you look at the much larger ethical behaviors, like being a religious person, being a monk or being a nun, will be meaningless if your life is going to be ending in at the death. You don't have to be live a difficult life. Why do you have to do that? So this Ajita Kambala's view, and then we have Nikantanatha Putta's view. So here you can see that these views that were during the time of the Buddha were very much influence our practice of ethics. Whether you become ethical person, what kind of behavior you will adopt depend on what you think about your own nature. Are you a determined person? Is the universe determined? Whether there is a creator? Is my life is going to be ended with death? Now the answer to these questions has much to do with your ethical behavior. In ethics, basically we ask the question, what should I do? What should I do? This is the subject matter of ethics. In ethics we ask, what should I do? Now, what should I do? The answer to this question depends much on these beliefs. If you really do not believe in efficacy of action, if you do not believe in free will, your ethics will be different. So therefore, this background is something very important. In the Mahatithayatana Sutta Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha lists 3 religious views as unsatisfactory, anasasika views. You will just read it because we already discussed these 3 things. One is Issara-nimmanavada, the creationist view. Then Sabbam Pubbe Katahetuvada, the view that everything is due to the past karma. Ahetu Appacchevada, view that everything happens without causes or conditions. When we examine these views, we can see that they have direct bearing on human action. Now this is Mahatithayatana Sutta. You find this in the Anguttara Nikaya. In the Anguttara Nikaya, Mahatithayatana Sutta, Buddha refers to these 3 things. Issara-nimmanavada, creationist view. Buddha says anasasika. Anasasika means not satisfactory. Not satisfactory. Because as we discussed, if you believe that you have been created by God, then of course human action do not have much meaning. Because God will look after it. God will take care of it. God has determined what should happen to you. So in such a situation, action cannot be meaningful. And then Sabbam Pubbe Katahetuvada, now that is what is called karma determinism. So the number Issara-nimmanavada is the theistic determinism. Sabbam Pubbe Katahetuvada is karma determinism. So any type of determinism, if you believe in determinism, then you are not responsible. I think one thing you can do is, if you really look at encyclopedia or dictionary or even Google or Wikipedia about some of these terms like theism, determinism, free will, you can get more knowledge. Because I do not have time to go through all these things in detail, but please read little more about the concept of free will. Okay? The concept of determinism, the concept of creationism, concept of God. So you can see, you will be able to see more meaning in what I say. And then the third is Ahetu Appacchevada view, that everything happens without causes or conditions. Now that again is a very interesting thing. If you believe in Ahetu Appacchevada, or if you don't believe in causes and conditions, the issue is that anything can happen. Now that's a very serious situation. Now according to the teaching of the Buddha, we know that if we do good, we will get good. If we do bad, we will get bad. Yadisang vapate bijang tadisang harate phalang. No? Kalyanakari kalyanam. If you do good things, kalyanakari, doer of good. Kalyanam, get good. Papakari cha papikam. If you do bad, you will get bad. Now, if you believe in ahetu appacchevad, what happens is you can't be sure. Because things happen out of no causes and conditions, which means that anything can happen. But now, of course, we can believe that we do good things and we will get good. Because our actions and the results correspond to each other. We get results according to our actions. So if we do good, we will get good. If we do bad, we will get bad. Now this is the logical and also just situation. However, if you believe in ahetu appacchevada, what happens is anything can happen. So why do you do good? If you cannot be sure about that you are going to get good, then what about the bad? Why do you refrain from doing bad if you are not sure about the outcome? So, ahetu appacchevada is also very interesting. It affects our ethical judgments. So, when we examine these views, we can see that they have direct bearing on human action. Okay, basically what I try to do with you this morning is to see these different religious beliefs that existed during the time of the Buddha had direct bearing on what you consider to be ethics or what you consider to be good and bad behavior. Discussing how the ideologies affect our action, the great Buddhist philosopher K.N. Jayatilakara says. Now this is a quotation from K.N. Jayatilakara. Actually this quotation comes from, there's a small book by him, Ethics in Buddhist Perspective. It was Wheel publication number 7576, you can find it online. It would therefore be the case that the ethics of Buddhism would be significant only if certain facts are true. There is freedom or free will in the sense enunciated. There is human survival law, continuity of individuality. Number 3, this continuity is such that avoidance of evil and the cultivation of the good along with purification of mind tends to make our nature better and our condition happier. While the opposite course of action has the reverse effect. That means if we don't do good things, then we will get the bad things. Number 4, there is a state when the mind is pure and cleansed of all defilements, a state of bliss, perfection, realization and ultimate freedom. Now according to K.N. Jayatilakara, K.N. Jayatilakara was one of the very great Buddhist philosophers. Now he has many writings. On K.N. Jayatilakara also you can look at in the Wikipedia or Google. He is one of the leading philosophers who passed away now. Now according to him, it would therefore be the case that ethics of Buddhism would be significant only if certain facts are true. In other words, what he says is, we can talk about ethics of Buddhism only if certain things are true. For example, look at number 1. Number 1 is, there is freedom or free will. Now, if we don't have free will, ethics will be meaningless. So, in order for ethics to be meaningful, you have to believe that you have free will. You are a free agent. You are free to do things. Now again, in the Buddhist literature, we get quite a lot of examples where Buddha discusses this. In one instance, a Brahmin comes and talks to the Buddha and says that he doesn't believe in free will. Then Buddha asks very simple question, then Brahmin, how did you come to be? And how are you going to with me? Are you not doing these things with your free will? Now this Brahmin came to the Buddha and said that he doesn't believe in free will. Then Buddha asked, then how did you come to me? Did somebody push you to come or you came on your own? So if you believe that you came on your own, then you have to believe that free will is there. So there are many discourses. I am not going to discuss in detail. We might come back to some of these things later. So in order for Buddhist ethics to be meaningful, number one, there is freedom of free will or free will. In the sense enunciated means he discussed it earlier. There is human survival and continuity of individuality. Now, what I said against materialist view, if you hold materialist view, then of course there is no rebirth. But survival of human personality is also needed in order for ethics to be meaningful. This continuity is such that the avoidance of evil and the cultivation of good alone with the purification of mind tends to make our nature happier. And also, we have to believe that when we do good things, our mind becomes purified. A purified mind is better than defiled minds. Now, in other words, if we don't believe that when our mind is purified, it is good, why do you do all these things to purify your mind? Buddha says, Sabba papassa akaranam, kusalassa upasampada, sachitta paryodapanam, purification of one's mind. Now, purification of mind is not easy, right? You meditate, you practice metta and all these things. That means that you believe that purified mind is better than defiled mind, right? So, in order to practice ethics, you have to believe that it has to be true. And then finally, last is the number 4. There is a state when the mind is pure and cleansed of all defilements, state of bliss. In other words, ultimately, when our mind is pure, the perfection of that purity is nirvana. So when realized in nirvana, our mind is purified mind, and then all the dukkha will be terminated. Now, if you don't believe that nirvana exists, nirvana is possible, then why do you do these things? So, which means that our being ethical according to Buddhism anticipates, our being ethical according to Buddhism presupposes that there are certain things true. One final thing is, our being ethical presupposes that there is something called nirvana, a state, a great happiness which we can attain. Otherwise, why do you do all these things? Why do we become Buddhist? Why do you become monks? Why do you become nuns? Because we believe that nirvana is possible, right? So, do you see now the point? In order for us to practice Buddhist ethics, or in order for us to see that Buddhist ethics is meaningful, all these 4 different things should be true. We have to have free will, we have to believe in survival, that means karma and punabhava. We have to believe that purification of mind is good, and also we have to believe that nirvana is possible. Nirvana is there. Now, if you don't believe in these things, you can't be a Buddhist. You can't be practicing Buddhist ethics. Okay? Now, when I started this discussion this morning, what I meant is, these are the basis of Buddhist ethics. Unless you believe these things, you can't be practicing Buddhist ethics. That is the basis. That's the foundation. The very fact that I am a Buddhist means that I accept these things. Very fact that you are a monk means you accept these things. You are a nun means you accept these things, right? So this is what is meant by the basis of Buddhist ethics. So to summarize what I did, because our time is already past, summarize what I said this morning. Basically, I wanted to show you the Buddhist ethics or teaching of the Buddha originated in a particular religious context. In that religious context, religious teachers held many different religious views, like 6 religious teachers, and Mahatithayatana Sutta refers to another 3 different types of religious traditions. So all these religious traditions were there. So the Buddha's religion, Buddha's ethics, what the Buddha said about good and bad, right and wrong, actually is some kind of response to these things. Buddha rejected those views. Having rejected those views, Buddha presented the system of ethics. And also, if we accept Buddha's system of ethics, it presupposes there are certain things. We have to believe that free will is there. We have to believe that karma and result is there. Those things. So these provide what I consider to be the basis of Buddhist ethics. Okay, I'm going to wind up my this morning discussion. From that, we will continue more further. If you have any questions or comments or disagreements or agreements, anything, you can come up now. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your sharing knowledge of Buddhist ethics. I come to realize the importance of faith, belief, Vedanta. This is Siddhika, beautiful Siddhika. I come to know if someone held more faith or more belief, so he would be more value on ethics, more value on Buddhist ethics. And if more value on more ethics, maybe more pollution, good pollution, Sedana. And then more good pollution, more moral speech, and more moral speech and more moral action. I've come to know and realize by your sharing knowledge.
Thank you very much. In fact, but the gentleman made the connection between saddha and then of course the action. This is something very, very important today. Now at this moment I don't have much time to go into it. However, I should say that by saddha, when we believe these things, we have to remember that we are not believing only out of our saddha, only out of our saddha to the Buddha. Actually we believe also it is the part of the experience, right? Now, when I said karma and survival, we are not believing simply because Buddha said that. We can also rationally see that. Now, that's why I gave you this example. I was born as an infant child. Now, I am, 60 or 70 or whatever age. Now, during this period, this infant child and myself consider to be the same. And I talk about my childhood. So, but on the other hand, we know that I am not the same infant. It is not the same body. It's not the same mind. It's not the same vijnana. But what is the connection? Connection is the continuation. Santati. Now, if this is true for this life, we can rationally think that it should be true for the next life also. However, as an ordinary person, I can't see the next life. So, for me, it is a rational belief. But for the Buddha, it was not merely a rational belief. Buddha could see. He had Pubbe Nivasa Anusati Jnana. And Arahants have Pubbe Nivasa Anusati Jnana. So for them, it is not a rational thing. It's an experience. They can see that. But you and I of course, I don't know others, but for me, I don't see it. But I accept it as a rational belief. As a rational belief. But but Buddha has seen it. Arahants have seen it. All those people who have achieved Pubbe Nivasa, Chutupapata Jnana have seen that. So, these things are not only saddha. Of course, saddha is very important. Saddha is the conviction. But at the same time, we just don't accept, because of saddha, we accept these things also because we can rationally know it. Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Reverend.
According to Buddhist ethics, there's a 5 precepts of piety, morality. Kill is wrong, bad. So still is wrong, bad. Even so, what is the Western ethics? What is good? What is right? What is wrong? What are the differences between Buddhist ethics and Western ethics?
Okay. Venerable's question is difference between, sit down, Buddhist ethics and the Western ethics. Again, it requires a very large, expanded answer, which I don't have time to talk about. In fact, when we say Western ethics, in the philosophical sense, actually Western ethics, from philosophical point of view, is not very much normative ethics. Western ethics as a philosophical thing is more meta-ethics. They talk about the nature of ethical statements, criteria of good and bad. However, ethical systems come in religion. For example, you can compare Buddhist ethics with Christian religious ethics, or you can compare Buddhist ethics with Islam religious ethics. But you can't compare Buddhist ethics with Western ethics because, Western ethics does not mean a set of normative ethics. Like in the 5 precepts, Samanera Sila, Upasampada Sila, we have normative ethics. When we talk about the philosophical sense, Western ethics or ethics in Western philosophy, we don't have that kind of list actually. We are talking more about meta-ethical considerations. But we can talk about compare and contrast the Buddhist ethics and Christian ethics, Buddhist ethics and Islam ethics, Buddhist ethics and Hindu ethics. This morning we don't have time, but according to the availability of time, I will be discussing some of these things with you. Okay, then we will wind up for this morning. This afternoon we will be conducting the discussion on world religions, and we will be continuing with that discussion. So thank you very much for participating and asking questions. Thank you very much.